All right. Hey, everybody. Thanks for joining us. I'm Jeff. Say hi, Charlie.
Hi, I'm Charlie.
We're the co-hosts of this. Charlie's the brains. I'm just along for the ride. And we're really lucky this time to have Robert, Joel, and Greg from New Monkey Studio. Um, hey guys, thanks for joining us.
Hello.
I think what
Hey.
Charlie and I wanted to do is start out with maybe each of you. I mean, I kind of have some notes about you guys as much as I know, but maybe just, Charlie and I don't just like to jump in and be like, hey, tell us about stories about Elliott Smith. Like, we want to kind of know a little bit. We can't go like 2 hours on each of your backgrounds. So kind of tell us about, your involvement in music and maybe bands you were in, or how you got involved in the LA music scene or whatever that sort of led up to knowing who Elliott was, being in Elliott's sort of circle, becoming involved with New Monkey. Like up to that point, like a brief synopsis of that about yourselves, and then maybe tell us, Charlie, you wanted them to kind of tell us what room they're sitting in New Monkey right now, which we'll get into like more of those details later, but kind of tell us where you are at the moment. Does that all make sense, guys?
Yeah,
All
sounds
right.
good.
Whoever wants to go first and kind of tell us about yourselves.
Robert,
Joel, I think you should.
I was going to
Joel,
say,
I-
you were my boss, so maybe you should start this off.
Okay, all right. I'll start out. Thank you guys for having us. It's really, it's not every day that we get to kind of share in a forum like this. So we've all been looking forward to it. So thank you for that. This started at Lookout Management and Vapor Records, which was the offices of Elliott Roberts and Neil Young. I had joined there originally as an intern, and moved through the ranks through there, as it was a really small operation. And at some point we were looking for some extra help, and I happened to pick up the phone, and there was a voice on the other end that was asking if they were looking for any interns. And I had since graduated away from that role, and I cupped the phone and I turned to our boss Bonnie, and I said, Bonnie, are we accepting any interns? And she said no. And I kept the phone cupped, and I said, are you sure about that? She said, well, if you want to look after it and be responsible for it, then you can. I said, okay. And Joel Graves introduced himself, and it went from there. And Joel came into the fold and really made a big difference in our world, and we became fast friends. He had, at some point, probably around 2003 or so, or like early 2004, he had come to me about the idea of taking over Elliott Smith's room, and we were very interested. We were very nervous about it, and we went through one pass. And with the way that things were at that time, it just was not going to make sense, and it was really hard, and we had to kind of let it go for a moment. And Joel, do you want to fill in this story? Because I think this would be good for the two of us to kind of go back and forth on one. But I think you should introduce Ashley, as Ashley was somebody that you were connected with.
Yeah, the initial way that we got involved with the studio actually was, I had been in a band called Early Mart, and had managed the band for a while, and was also playing in the band, and for a few years. And a couple of my bandmates in Early Mart were also playing in Elliott's band, being Ariana Murray and Scott McPherson. Many of you know, played with Elliott for years. And they were kind of gearing up to be the latest lineup of his band at the time of his death. So I was kind of really close within that scene of people. Also used to see Elliott out at Acetone shows and stuff like that around town, Silver Lake Lounge, Spaceland. And so Robert and I had been working together for a little bit, and when I actually found out from a music writer named Karen Rose, who's now based in Detroit, she let me know, I think this is current to your interests, Elliott's family is looking for someone to take over the studio. And so Robert and I actually ended up reaching out and got in touch with the point person at the time who was dealing with it was Elliott's sister, Ashley Welsh, who I had already met a couple times in passing, like knew her a little bit. And so very quickly we found ourselves down here checking out the studio and for a time, kind of entertained how we were going to try to make it work, but it didn't seem like it could work. So we ended up kind of deciding against putting an offer in and let it go. A few months passed after that, and the family still had not found a suitable buyer for the studio, and they were considering piecing out all the gear. They were to a studio broker. And at that point, Ashley kind of let us know that it was still available and that that they would prefer hopefully to see the studio remain a studio and stay within his community of musicians and artists that he was working with in LA. So after several months of thinking that it had gone and that we weren't going to do it, we actually came back in, made an offer, and went for it. And I guess it was 16 and a half years ago or something now. I think Elliott owned the place for 2 or 3 years, probably last couple years of his life.
Cool. Yeah, I remember that. I kind of had like some background a little bit before that. I saw Joel at Father John Misty's show and kind of gave him some background myself too about when I first heard about Elliott building the studio. I was lucky enough to go backstage and see Elliott in 2001. It was December 2001, and I was telling Joel one of the cool connections was that Russell Pollard was who was in the band Alaska and was touring with Elliott at the time. Well, he was backstage with Elliott as well, and the connection to Joel is that they were in a band together called Everest, right? And
also
so,
Russ was in Early Mart for a while too, so we actually played in Early Mart for a little while together as well.
Oh, cool. And then,
yeah.
And it came up that Elliott didn't want to be on DreamWorks anymore, and he was kind of like working on building a studio. I think he had already worked with John Bryan, had also with David McConnell as well. There was this point where he was building the studio, and I remember him talking about the Trident A range board. He was like, it was like he was explaining it to me like it was something like the Beatles used. I didn't know if it was specific to the Beatles, and I know in like the first time Joel had emailed me, he mentioned that they were still kind of trying to figure out if it was used by George Harrison for All Things Must Pass. And I don't know, do you ever confirm that? Did you guys ever confirm?
Yeah, I can shed some light on that. The thing that we had heard, one of the early stories that we heard about the console, was that Elliott was really psyched by the idea that some of All Things Must Pass had been recorded on the console. From what we found out in our research since then, it doesn't seem like the console was probably fabricated until 72 or so.
Mm-hmm.
So it seems to be after All Things Must Pass was actually recorded. So maybe was a bit of a tall tale. Somebody was trying to sell the console with or something, I'm not sure. But as far as we know, also, it seems like the console was, seems to have originally been ordered by Le Studio outside Montreal in Canada.
Yeah, and
Where is
some of the reason why that might have been not so much fabricated but thought of was that Trident Studios was one of the rooms that the Beatles went to when they were getting away from Abbey Road, and so the fact that this was a Trident, and probably they didn't know which Trident A range of the 13 that were made, which one at that time was this one. It would be easily kind of thought of that this might have been one of the ones that Harrison had recorded on. But Joel, I'm in full accordance with you. I don't think that was the case.
Yeah, it doesn't seem like it really, the timelines don't really seem to line up. I think it was more a nice story. It's possible that it could have been around at Trident for longer than we know, because there doesn't seem to be an exact timeline. There are some people doing research on the topic, but I haven't seen a definitive timeline yet. So we've also heard, and I think that this may have come from A-Range co-creator Malcolm Toft when he came to the studio. I think that he guessed that our console was one of the early ones because of the design and layout of it. And he guessed it to be about number 3, possibly.
That's cool. And then as far as I know, Rush and Cat Stevens have played their music through it as well. Is that right?
Yeah, it seems that throughout the 70s, it lived most of the 70s at the studio outside Montreal. So it was on several Rush records. Cat Stevens, there's photos of him leaning on it. So we've got some pretty good evidence that he used it. And rumors that the Police may have used it around 79 or so, right, as the studio was transitioning to a fancy new SSL console in the late 70s. So not sure if that was what was used for the Police.
Yeah, if that is true, I think that it was for Ghost in the Machine, and Ghost in the Machine was mostly recorded in Montserrat, but for some reason
they mixed Every Little Thing She Does Is Magic.
Right, at Le Studio.
Mm-hmm.
So it's possible that it was done on this board.
Wow, that's cool.
And if it was the third console, so the console was designed as the first console for engineers, designed by engineers. And the idea was, when they designed it, they weren't really looking to make like a product. So when they made the first one, they were like, all right, this is the prototype, let's go. They threw out the first one. Then they created the second one, did a couple records, all right, got rid of the second one. So in theory, this is the third one, but I don't think they kept this one. I think they actually kept the fourth one, but this was the first one to actually ship out.
You guys have details on how Elliott, who he acquired this from, or how? I mean, all I've read is like he got stuff on eBay and hoped stuff worked. Like, do you have specific details on this acquisition?
We've been looking for that and haven't found much. I do know from the aforementioned Russ Pollard that he was here when the console arrived from Nashville. So he bought it from a studio where it lived in Nashville, apparently through most of the 80s after it left Marin Heights. So it seems that it lived in Nashville, maybe in one place, and we actually haven't found much documentation on that.
Well, we know now, right, Robert? We met the guy.
Yeah, so there's is it Jeff, Greg? Is that right?
I'm blanking on his name. I'm sorry.
So
I'll look it up right now.
There's a gentleman that we met up with over the last couple of years that shed a little light, because he had
Paul
Paul
Stewart.
Thank you.
Paul Stewart at Genelec. Sorry about that, Paul.
Yeah, thank you, Greg, for correcting that. Paul had come in because he became aware that we're using these a set of Genelec speakers in here, and he kind of did a little research on the fact that they were here at New Monkey, and he reached out to us and let us know that he was the broker that Elliott had used to get the board and a lot of the other outboard gear here that we have. And I think Elliott was originally working with one individual, and he just didn't like, sort of, wasn't so much the prices, he didn't like the vibe of what was coming back, and he ended up finding this guy, Paul, and he asked Paul to be the broker for it, and Paul ended up getting all this stuff. So Paul knew some things. He knew that it had come from Tennessee, but didn't know everything along the way about how it had spent its 80s, the 80s, if you will.
I can fill in some of that because I do remember some of the things that he said. So one thing was that the console, the 48, the U87, and the Fairchild have all lived together since Le Studio. So it went from Le Studio as a package to Coach House Studios in Nashville. And that's where it lived for the 80s, and then moved here to New Monkey. So they've all.
I didn't even know that. This is what
Yeah,
I get from being
that's
out of
cool,
town.
right? I love that. I love that they all travel as a little family. And then from Coach House Studios, I mean, I did just kind of a quick internet search on the discography of that time. And it looks like a bunch of Amy Mann was probably done on this console, a bunch of Michael Bolton, and then we're definitely in the range to have done a couple like Selena records maybe on that console too.
Wow.
Wow, that's cool.
Oh, that's great info.
I was just to wrap up that little story of talking to Elliott backstage with Russ, and one of the funniest things that, and I tried to explain it to Joel, that there was a banter between Russ and Elliott because as Elliott was building the studio, they were talking about how they were competing against each other for the vintage equipment that ended up being in the studio, and Russ was jokingly frustrated with Elliott because Elliott would have more of the money to be able to beat Russ on the same equipment that they were both chasing. And it was funny because Elliott was just giving Russ a hard time about it.
and Russ ended up getting to use it quite a bit, for sure.
Oh, cool. Awesome.
Yeah.
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 Um,
Had a lot of Elliott's friends come back through here through the years, which is always nice.
cool. So what so you kind of going, I remember too when Ashley was first kind of talking, I have it printed out here in front of me, but the email that she sent me, because she reached out to the site to
Oh wow.
to post, like that the studio is available for fans, like to basically kind of ask us if we had any money to help keep it going, because they weren't going to be able to manage it as the family and continue it financially as well. So she was hoping through Sweet Adeline that we could get the word out about it, and of course as young as we were at the time, we all had this imaginary thing, we can gather all the money together and buy the studio. but that was unrealistic because most of us probably had no idea what to do with the studio other than be a museum or something like that.
Well, it was not too far being unrealistic for us as well, because we dove into the deep end and had to learn how to swim really fast.
Right.
One of the things Charlie and I talked about was like asking you guys, because I think we read like in articles about like you got the studio and there was equipment in different states of usefulness at the time. So like, do you want to hop into that as far as what was your all abilities and knowledge of gear, and then like what were like if you want to get into like how much work it was to get everything up to like running order and stuff, as much as you want to get detailed about that.
I think it's fair to say that we're all musicians and somewhat technical, but not technicians.
Mhm.
So I think more so over the years of owning this place, we've become better techs from owning it. But I think, you know, I had been working at a recording studio and was around recording stuff, was recording myself and bands and things like that, and had an interest in it, but also was playing. And so I feel like in the beginning, you know, when Robert was talking about us kind of diving into the deep end, we didn't know what the state of the gear was. Almost everything needed to be tested. There was piles of things that that we didn't know whether they worked or not. Closets filled with stuff that was just sort of set aside, or tubs or bins of things that were collected. Microphones, tons of eBay purchases, no doubt. Apparently he was definitely, like you mentioned earlier, quite the fan of buying gear on eBay. So we didn't really, I don't think we knew the depth of everything that needed to be gone through, from the cabling and the walls and the wiring to the patch bay on the console, and let alone all the individual pieces of outboard gear and individual microphones. So it was, you know, literally every time we plugged something in, making notes and you know, setting things aside that weren't working. And also the console, being that it's from the early 70s, it's you know, a lot of electric parts have half-lives and full lives that end. Capacitors dry up and die, and so there's been things of that nature that we didn't fully expect. The ghosts in the machine, so to speak, that, you know, we've learned to deal with over the years. But it's mainly been from hiring the right people, finding people who understand the studio and understand the console, understand our specific gear. We know that from what we've heard from friends and family that Elliott went through a bunch of techs here. And it's also sounds like he was spending weeks on end soldering stuff here himself and fixing things. And if he got a piece of gear that didn't quite work right, but he felt like he could fix it, he would fix it himself. So it sounds like he was doing a lot of that engineering kind of work as well as tech work here during his time here as well. So it was set up like a home, almost more like a home studio. It was an individual studio. He knew where everything was, and I think it probably worked fine for him. But when we got in here, it definitely needed a reorganization, and for us to figure out a way for us to pull the gear together and make the racks work for outside engineers to be able to come in. And it was quite intuitive. And the fun part of that is that Elliott left little notes around, and there's still some handwritten notes on some of the gear and stuff that were from him. And we've of course tried to leave that stuff as much as possible until it falls off or crumbles into dust. But I think it's something that he definitely struggled with a bit too, from what we can tell. It sounded like sometimes he would get frustrated and end up working on getting stuff to work right rather than recording songs at times. So it's always been a bit of an uphill battle for us, and kind of something that we kind of dove into at a time when a lot of studio businesses have been becoming downsized or just straight up going under. So
Robert,
Yeah.
go ahead. I'm sorry.
I was just gonna say, one thing to add is I think on top of not knowing what was working from that time, the studio business also had a major shift, and we were pretty late to the game as far as getting a designated digital rig. Like, I think we were all analog all the way up until 2011, I want to say 2010. And so adjusting the studio for that was also a whole nother thing. And, optimizing the studio. And, it's funny because even now, I think we're in our best fighting shape that we've been as far as, so, at first, I think the first thing they did was recap the console when they first got the studio, Robert and Joel. And I think the console's working really well. And then the outboard gear was the problem. And now, it's like we got all the outboard gear fixed, and now we have to go back to the console. It's always just like a leaking boat. You gotta, any studio owner knows that you just gotta put out the fires anywhere because they're always popping up.
Awesome. And Greg, when did you join New Monkey? I could have swore was it 2010?
So I came on board in 2009. So I used to work at Mad Dog Studio in Burbank. I was there for about 5 years, and that studio closed down. And the head engineer, one of my mentors, Eric Horn, he was, well, at the time I was teaching guitar, and he was like, "Hey Greg, I'm gonna go work at New Monkey. It was Elliott Smith studio. You want to come assist me?" And he was doing me a solid, one, just to help out, but two, to like get me into a new studio. Because what happens to engineers when a studio closes, it's not like you walk into another studio and you continue where you were at. Like, you have to start at the bottom all over again. So he was doing me a solid and came down, and I was already a massive Elliott fan. So I was like, hell yeah, like, anything I can do to work at the studio. And got down here, did a couple sessions, and I think I met Joel first. I'm pretty sure I met Joel first, and told him, if you need an assistant for sessions, let me know, and just kind of put in the work. And at Mad Dog, it took me probably 2 years to get into a position where I was engineering sessions, and at New Monkey, just from all the previous experience, I probably did it within like 6 months, started engineering sessions and doing things. And, that seemed like they needed someone to help. And I was more than happy to help.
Awesome.
Someone asked a question in the chat, and I'm not sure exactly what they're asking. It says, did you guys end up getting any guitars too? Which I think maybe they mean was like any of Elliott's instruments. It was all just recording gear. There were no like instruments or anything that was left there.
No.
Very few instruments. They had a trouble finding a lot of stuff, it sounds like. A lot of guitars had been loaned out to people and just never came back. I heard at one point he had 8 Gibson 330s, and I think the family found 4 or 5 of them. There was stuff around, but they quickly took it all to, I think, to protect the guitars that were close to him. I think that they kept important heirloom sort of things. And then I don't know, I remember they were selling some stuff at West LA Music at one point. Or one of the local shops, Westwood Music, I think, where they had a relationship. So I guess, some of the stuff was just resold just back out to the public, like I think pretty shortly after Elliott passed. But we have one of his keyboards that he was using live, a 88 weighted key Kawai keyboard that Kelsey, I see your name here. Kelsey's on this call. She has it right now over. Hey. Yeah. Oh, there it is.
Oh, cool.
Oh, cool.
That's awesome.
This is Kelsey Oria right here. He's a good friend of New Monkeys, and we're actually producing a record of Elliott tunes that Kelsey's covering right now. In her own special way. So that's a project we've been working on that I was going to talk about later. But to mention the gear, that's one of the pieces of Elliott's gear that we had. And Kelsey needed something to practice on at home, so she's got the keyboard on loan from us right now.
And it's the King's Crossing keyboard, right?
Yeah, that was from what I heard this from Ariana Murray from Early March. She was playing that keyboard live with Elliott's band at that time, when he passed. And my understanding was that one of the patches on that keyboard is the King's Crossing keyboard part, and the recording one, which was also probably done here in this tracking room that's over my shoulder here, with also our good friend Fritz Michaud on drums and engineering.
Robert, to kind of go back, were you a big fan of Elliott's as well? When Joel approached you about the studio?
I was, absolutely. I mean, I had being anyone that was around music at that time in Los Angeles, it was hard to kind of run into people that weren't into Elliott, for one. And you would also run into Elliott at shows, whether out in the audience or whether he was performing. And we had, I never met him. There were times I was in the room with him, but I never met him. And his music was a really big influence, and it was one of the really deciding factors for Joel and I was the fact that it was a creative space of Elliott Smith's. We just felt that so much of his energy was wrapped up in here, and to us, above and beyond the gear and the space that he inhabited, it just felt like something needed to be it needed to be accented in whatever form it was going to become. And that's what Joel and I became committed to.
Awesome.
Well, I just say thank you for doing it. I mean, I just think about if the pieces just got sold to just random people, and that you guys saved the studio and like several levels, like just Elliott fans knowing it's there, honoring Elliott's legacy. And then just, I mean, I have young friends in the LA music scene that I know have recorded there, and that it's just a place where, musicians that are still coming up can go and, record and have professional people who are there to help them and not rip them off. And I mean, I can think of 3 people off the top of my head that have recorded there, and they don't have anything to say other than great things. So it's great that it's still there for the musicians of the area here.
That's great. I mean, we've worked really hard to make the experience when people are coming in to record, to have it be something that is not only fruitful from an artistic standpoint, but we want them to have an experience.
Mm-hmm.
And I would like to jump in too and kind of go off what Jeff was saying, is that, yeah, thank you so much. I know Elliott had a different perspective about what he wanted to do with the studio, and that was probably to bring bands in who couldn't afford, or musicians, artists who couldn't afford necessarily to record in other places for basically for free. Of course, you guys had to make a business decision to keep it open, but you've kept it super reasonable to and make it available to artists to come in and use it. And compliments to all 3 of you for not only just keeping that energy alive, but honoring what he wanted, with in a fair way. And thank you so much for honoring his memory like that.
You're very welcome. I wanted to just interject too that Joel had brought up Fritz Michaud, who was incredibly instrumental in, as Elliott's engineer and drummer and friend. Fritz was somebody that really worked hard to usher us into this and help us out in any way that he could. And also I want to mention another person who hasn't yet to be mentioned is an engineer, mixer friend of ours named Mike Terry. And Mike was somebody who was, again, incredibly instrumental. It was Joel, Mike, and I in the very beginning going through all the gear and getting everything sorted. And for the first, I would say the first 5 years of New Monkey's history, it was, you know, Mike was one of the unsung heroes.
Mike's a truly fantastic, decorated recording engineer, Grammy winning, like really incredible, sensitive artist as an engineer. And so we were lucky to have him in our corner when we made the decision to do this. And I think was part of the reason why we felt comfortable doing it, was knowing we had somebody like Mike who understood the technical side of things really well. So yeah, those guys have been huge part of this too.
Another question in the chat, if it's okay for me to interject. Someone said, go ahead.
I was just gonna say one thing before you switch topics. Is I was gonna say one, thank you all for acknowledging the effort, for sure. I was gonna say, you know, as curators of a studio, I think it's important for musicians to know that a studio isn't a winning proposition. Like, it's definitely a labor of love, and it's definitely something that and this is like goes across for any studio. It's, you know, you don't go into a studio business to make a ton of money. It's you're doing it for a community. You're doing it to make a place for people to make music, large acts and small acts. And I think that's a point that can easily get swept under the rug for a lot of musicians. But, you know, just to be able to say it and just say, hey, like, this is for you, you know, I'd like to extend that hand out.
That's awesome.
Awesome, definitely. So the question in the chat, and Charlie, you might know this as well too, and I'm the fan that doesn't know these things, but do you know which Elliott songs were actually recorded at New Monkey? Some of From a Basement on the Hill, ? Is what somebody was asking.
Yeah, Charlie, you may know more, but I mean, I think from what we know for sure, it sounds like King's Crossing. I think that there was versions of many of the songs done in many different places, so it gets a little gray of what got used from where on a lot of the rest of the record. Yeah, I'm not really sure. Charlie, any thoughts? I don't want to say it's not true, because like the story that apparently, you know, All Things Must Pass had been recorded on the console, like those stories get passed on and then they just become, the myths become the truth. So I really am not too sure.
Fritz told me Coast to Coast was like, he definitely did the drums in there.
They did some of the drum tracking at another studio though, because somebody else told me about the tracking of one of the drummers at another studio. So yeah, I don't know.
Yeah, when it comes to like the specifics, yeah, definitely the studio exists in the basement era. You know, basically all the work was, the studio basically probably was starting to be built after working with John Bryan, and then with David McConnell after that in Malibu. And then what I like to assume happened was, with the studio being built, that Elliott was either using the tracks that he had already done, or kind of redoing them. You know, I know there's various versions of songs. So you know, it's hard to judge. Yeah. As Larry Crane said, Elliott was the most organized when it came to recording and organizing all of that stuff. But I agree with Joel, because you know, unfortunately, a few days before, or a week or so before, I think it was a week or so before Elliott passed, I did get an email from Jennifer Chiba with pictures of Elliott in the studio finishing up King's Crossing. Or actually, no, even before the day before he passed, he finished King's Crossing. And so yeah, I can, as far as Jennifer Chiba was telling me, that King's Crossing was done before the day Elliott passed away. So,
and it sounds from what we had heard that the story was that he had proposed to Jennifer in the tracking room, after getting her to do a vocal on King's Crossing, which was the "Give me one good reason not to do it, because I love you" exchange that happens. Apparently he proposed to her after that.
Wow.
We've heard.
Wow. Yeah, I never got to to hear that
Yeah.
story. That's interesting.
I feel like that probably came from Jennifer.
Right.
That story, if I remember correctly. Yeah.
And so so kind of even going back again a little bit, when what was it like to basically walk into the studio for the first time and being fans? I assume maybe Ashley was there with you guys, to kind of unlock the door for you to see the studio. What was the feeling like to just walk in there and just kind of see how everything was, the environment, and your first impressions of the studio?
Definitely a bit of awe on my part. As we alluded to, Robert and I were both definitely huge Elliott fans. I revered him as a songwriter and respected pretty much every single thing he did. So it was cool to walk in here and see what was going on with it. You could tell some of it was still very much, looked like it had been in working use recently. And some of it was just, you could tell they were doing inventory and going through stuff and just labeling things and boxing stuff up and setting things aside. So I don't think we got to see necessarily completely what it looked like in action when Elliott was here. But it was neat. I mean, we hear stories about him sleeping in this room I'm in now, we call the Red Room. We've heard stories about him sleeping apparently on a futon in here for weeks on end because he'd get so into being here. So yeah, it felt, and we still have a little sofa out in the lounge that's been here since we've got the place. Oh yeah, Greg.
Sofa's right there.
Yeah, Greg's enjoying it. So there's elements that we've tried to keep like how it was when we first walked in. I mean, I remember seeing Ashley sitting watching TV in the little lounge, just like passing time, and yeah, it's been pretty fun to kind of shift the place from being a museum, but into something that other people can come in and use as well.
Once you bought it, how long was it until you really had it where like people were coming in and doing like actual recording?
I feel like we got right at it, and maybe
yeah.
a little faster than we should have, but
yeah,
So,
there was a time when we were the first thing that really needed the most attention was the board, and there was a gentleman that had been hired that really didn't do such an honorable job, and we couldn't open for a good chunk of time because we were waiting for this board to get done, and he ended up never completing the job at hand, and we ended up having to abandon and go a different route and sort of start the process over again. And it was a very painful thing because, as anybody knows, whenever you've made a large purchase, it'd be like purchasing a home but not being able to live in it for a couple of years when you needed a place to live, and that was kind of like what it was like for us. But once we got that thing going, it became a lot smoother. And I know, Charlie, one of the questions I've been asked about to just sort of describe the room that we're in. So I'm right now in the control room, and in following the thread of sort of like what was it like when we first walked into the place. I remember walking specifically into the control room where all of the gear was piled sort of on top of each other, And one of the decisions that Joel and Mike and I had made out of the gate was, at the time when we walked in, the gear felt like it was on top of you rather than you sort of mastering it. So we made a really conscious decision to get all the gear down into waist level and start there, where we started to feel like the room could be something that we could work with rather than it kind of overtaking us. That was one feeling I remember having.
It needed a reset, for sure. Just on an organizational level.
I just realized, kind of the time period that Elliott passed, and then you guys bought the studio in August of 2004. From a Basement on the Hill came out only in October, a few months later. Was any of that kind of wrapping up the as far as I understood, Rob and Joanna, who produced From a Basement on the Hill, worked at New Monkey to finish off the album. Do you have any background about that kind of period?
I don't, and I don't know that to be true.
Okay.
I don't think that they worked here. I don't know. I've worked with Rob on several records over the years, and he has his own place, and I feel like it seems most likely that he would take it there and work on his stuff. I think also the kind of like, I wouldn't say the stuff was in disarray here, but just a weird like we had mentioned earlier, like a personal organization. So it wasn't, I don't think it would have been that easy for them to come in and work here in that way. I don't know. Had you guys heard anything about that? It's news to me.
I haven't heard anything about that. Yeah, I think Rob, being as technically as he is, I have a feeling he would have taken it to his place.
Yeah, we were not. I mean, yeah, it was not ready for sure.
Gotcha. Jeff, did you see a question?
Me? There's questions in the chat. I don't know what this is. Maybe I'm just clueless. Is the Rocket to Russia poster still up?
That is a great question. The poster is actually down at the moment, but I have it still, because it was actually Fritz's poster. So I think that I can't remember if we gave it to Fritz, or I think it's rolled up in our storage, but it's set aside to go back to Fritz. But the Rocket to Russia poster was still up when we got the place. Yeah.
Mm-hmm. I see is the gear haunted question. Yeah,
I didn't touch that one.
Yeah, some people might say, no, I don't know. I think in the time that I've been here, and I'm sure even in the time before that, like it's been a constant process of smoothing out all the little kinks. And it's at this point, things don't take us by surprise too much. Like, things still happen, but as any engineer would, like you work around it. I wouldn't say the gear is haunted. I think it's old gear. It's telling stories in buzz form.
We do have a couple ghost stories, and they're very Casper friendly ghost kind of stories. I think they're usually a good reminder to people to like try hard and do their best. And if somebody named Elliott's looking over your shoulder, like, you kind of really gotta do your best and do your homework before it's time to come to the table. So I don't know. It's kind of a positive. We've heard some stories of people feeling like a presence was watching them, or door closing, or there's a few things that have happened here and there. So the haunting stuff, I feel, is mainly good. it's, Elliott was such a humble and kind of shy and loving spirit that if his ghost is hanging around the studio a little bit, then that's got to be a good thing.
Can you tell us a little bit more about Fritz? Because the reason why I mentioned Fritz is because he was kind of like a part of that transition between working with Elliott in the studio and then working with you guys in the studio, as well as kind of I was reading Joel's email, and kind of like it was, we were kind of like bouncing things off Fritz. If Fritz seemed like it was going in the right direction, then you guys were feeling good about it. And I was just wondering if you could maybe expand on Fritz's involvement with the transition.
Yeah, I think Fritz had a limited time here. I know that he definitely spent substantial time here from the stories that he's told me. But also, I think when we took it over, it was a bit of a reset and a bit of a restart. So Mike Terry really initially on the engineering aspect kind of helped us get going and like make the transition to getting it up and running and working. And Fritz was on the road a lot at that time. He's a fantastic engineer, be it in the studio or from front of house at a live concert. So he's kind of been busy and had been in and out a bunch. But he's somebody that has just been there for us like the entire time, just as a friend. So people like Fritz and Russ that knew Elliott and spent real time with him working on music and hashing out ideas and trying things and having successes and failures, and any of those people that understood what he was trying to accomplish here, it's always great to have them around. And Fritz is extremely intelligent and has no problem whatsoever sharing his opinion. So if there's something that wasn't jiving or that wasn't working right over here, we've often been gotten a first honest opinion from Fritz, saying, why aren't you guys doing this, kind of thing. So so it's good to have those friends who can tell you when you're pissing in the wind sometimes.
Cool.
Someone asked, I don't know, because she's an East Coast person. Someone asked if Mary Lou Lord has been, I guess, there, recorded, been involved in any way. So I don't know if it was a very vague, kind of vague question, but.
Yeah, I don't think so. Not to my knowledge during our tenure. There's evidence of some interesting things here, like a console tape that shows, that Elliott had been recording John Spencer Blues Explosion here, and some stuff like that. But no Mary Lou Lord stuff that I've seen or heard about.
She hasn't even recorded too much since probably 2004, sporadically, but yeah, and she's in the Boston area pretty much. So wanted to relay the question, but let's see.
I wanted to ask about Greg. So being an Elliott fan and going from the studios we're working at, and then going to New Monkey, and I don't know what kind of equipment you might have used beforehand. What was it like to kind of come into a studio with so much vintage stuff, and maybe I don't know if you were the one also influencing the forward additions of a more modern technology to kind of sync that up at the studio
Sure.
now.
Yeah, so Mad Dog was a fully commercial studio. We had a Neve 8088, I think it was a 48 channel console, and then a lot of the same gear minus the Fairchild and a couple. I mean, different gear. Like Mad Dog had like a C12. Here we have a 48. They had like U67s. So I definitely had my hands on high end gear. It wasn't as vintage, I will say that. But I did come from like full on commercial studio background. Like my very first day, I proudly swept the parking lot while the Mars Volta was recording their second record, and served a lot of coffee that first year. But anyways, yeah. So coming to New Monkey, for me it was honestly it was. I mean, I really don't even know if Joel and Robert know this, like how big of an Elliott fan like I was and I am still. Like so I went to recording school at MI, and while I was at recording school, I also did the guitar program there, and it was a weird synchronicity. I had a friend tell me like, dude, you gotta like check out Elliott Smith, one of my best friends, and I was like, all right, cool. And I like kind of listened to him, but I didn't go listen yet. And then like the very next week, my teacher Dale Turner, he was I was a chord melody class, and he was like, all right, guys, today is a very important lesson. Like we're gonna study Elliott Smith. This is happiness, which is this is the webcast. This is happiness. And he's like, this might be the most important song I show you in this entire time here. And so we listened through, and he was like, sounds easy. Now go home, learn this, try and play it, and sing it and play it on your own. See how hard that is. See how complex that is. And then it was a recurring theme, because as I'm going through the guitar program, a bunch of other teachers, like I had another teacher, I'm blanking on his name right now, but he showed us Son of Sam, and he was like, you hear this? Like, this is jazz. This is rock. It's its own thing, but this is jazz. Like, this is so complex. Um, and so anyways, when I got the chance to come down to the studio, I mean, I definitely, like, first day I was super nervous. I remember meeting Joel, super nervous, because I
He's
knew the minute I knew the minute I walked in, I was like, I want to work here. Like, I want to work here real bad. And yeah, I mean, I think I saw the opportunity, and I just went for it, and happened to be that Joel and Robert are both just some of the coolest people I've ever met. Like, I consider them also mentors in my life, and being able to align myself with them was a privilege, and also to do it in the studio space that is like a dream was also, real cool. And as far as advancing the studio forward technologically, um, I mean, I'll let Robert and Joel speak to that more, but I definitely pushed. Like I I think a little bit that would help is it's like some of my background when I started. I started as an engineer, and then I've moved as into being a producer and a songwriter, but it's not so much by choice. Um, when I was at Mad Dog, the reason we closed down is, you know, so the complex was shaped like an L, and on the left side was Mad Dog. On the north side is a publishing company slash recording studio called Pulse. And towards the last years of Mad Dog, I would show up and I'd realize, like, our side, it was like beat up crappy Honda, beat up crappy Toyota, beat up van, and then on their side it was like Mercedes, Porsche, Audi, and I was like, all right, we're both doing music, we're doing something very different here. And I had realized is that something has changed in the music industry. I didn't know what it was, but I knew something had changed. And sure enough, like, I remember when I started at Mad Dog, my very first session was like a 2-month long session. And then it went from 2 month to a month long, to a month long to 2 week long, to a weekend, to we're going to record all the drums for the record in a day, which is great for the artist, but for the entire engineering industry, that was relying on this work to live, I quickly knew that I had to make some kind of backup plan or change in order to survive. And so when I got into New Monkey, I've always kept the mindset of like how to keep us relevant and to survive. And a lot of that was switching, at least hybridizing the digital and analog, getting us to work with publishing companies and things like that to keep us current. I mean, it's what you have to do. I mean, at this point in the music industry, I feel like I've seen, just in my short time, I've seen it crash and rebuild itself twice.
It may be worth mentioning that Elliott was also making the transition from, he's known as such like an analog guy, recording on, his reel-to-reels at home, as well as 4-tracks and so forth. But he had a Motu system that he had been recording on his computer at the studio here. So meaning Mark of the Unicorn? The old Motu recording system. So it looked like he was starting to go that direction, probably at the time of his passing.
And also in that transition, I would say that there was less interest for a period of time in the 20-aughts on recording in an analog fashion. It's when as Pro Tools was really starting to rise, not only in studios, but then the jump into personal systems. It was a shiny new toy that people were really interested in, and a very useful one. It took us a while to be able to afford to catch up. But I would say Greg absolutely led the charge in the change where we would welcome the digital sessions and be able to do them with holding our heads up high in terms of the ability of how we would do it. And Greg, we talked a little bit about this, you and I and Joel, before the call, but I think it'd be really good time to bring up sort of what we've been doing here in the studio in terms of marrying the analog and the digital together.
Yeah, well, one thing that I think is sum up what's really cool about what I think we can do now that just wasn't really possible 10 years ago is we can have like a full band, like we just did a 2-week record, had a band come in and record. But I've also done sessions where they're like quote unquote writing sessions, and you'll have a full band in the live room, everything isolated just as if you were recording the band. But then in the control room, you'll have these new school Ableton producers where they'll be on their laptop, and there'll be like 3 of them. They'll be working on their laptop. One guy creates a beat, throws it to the person in the control room, and then the band in the control room will then play on that and then kick it back to the producer while another one gives them another song. Which, it's different strokes for different folks, but I think in 2021, it's a cool thing to just know that that's possible. Like that was just a thing you couldn't do.
Awesome. So I was just curious, if you guys have like each, aside from maybe the Trident, if there's like a special equipment that you just love in the studio, like to use. I don't know, Robert, if you, I know Joel and Greg uses the studio on a regular basis probably, but I don't know if you still record yourself. I was just curious what is maybe one of your favorite pieces of equipment or environment in the studio that you just enjoy being a part of or having.
My answer will probably go quickest, Charlie, with the way you've set this up, and it's true. I'm not the most technical person. I tend to kind of keep myself more in the managerial side of things and keeping the tracks greased. But I will say that my favorite piece is probably the Fairchild, only because I get excited every time it gets used. And I will tell you that one of them, we were going back to the early days when we were getting stuff repaired. There was only, I think, one place at the time that could do repairs on the Fairchild, and we needed to get it done. This would have been in the, I don't know, like 2005 or 6 or something like that. And we had I had to move it to, I had to take it to the studio where it needed to get repaired. And I remember as I put it in the back seat of my truck, I remember thinking, this is the first piece of this is the first anything that I've ever had in my truck that was worth more than my truck. I had never had that experience before where the piece I was carrying was more expensive than the actual vehicle itself. And it was really nerve-wracking. We were very happy to get it back and have it be safe. But the Fairchild is probably the thing that I get most excited about, and I find that a lot of people tend to gravitate towards it.
Can you give us a description for someone like me who is not aware of what the Fairchild is? And just to throw out, you used to drum as well, is that correct?
Correct. Yeah. Yeah.
Okay.
Yep. I'm gonna let Greg pipe in about like what the Fairchild can do, but I will tell you it's a 1948 and it's a compressor. And Greg, I'm gonna let you take it from there.
Yeah, so it's a Fairchild 670 compressor, classically known for recording at EMI Studios with Beatles. So me and Joel were gracious enough to have Jeff Emmerich in here like a few months probably before he passed. And he came in, and it was the most random thing. He hit us up on Instagram, and he was like, "Hey, I'm doing a bunch of studio tours. You want to come down?" And I told Joel, I was like, "Well, I mean, I think Jeff Emmerich wants to come check out the studio. It could be a fake, but he says it's going to be us sick. So let's just go and hope that Jeff Emmerich shows up." And so for anybody that doesn't know, Jeff Emmerich recorded the Beatles in probably like the most epic era, the Sgt. Pepper era. And so anyways, came down, and lo and behold, it was him coming out of the car, and we're like, all right, we're going to have a cool interview here. And so to fast forward, one of his favorite pieces was the Fairchild, and we were lucky enough for him to tell us about how he did the Beatles recording of the drums. Like, his big secret was the kick D12 and the snare. It was like a distant snare mic with the D19 into the Fairchild, and he would talk about smacking it to get that sound on the Beatles recordings. But what was also funny to hear him talk about that is, being an engineer, he was like, and it's not like we were trying to be clever. It was survival. Like, Ringo just didn't like the sound of a close mic drum, so he just moved it back, and he hit it, and then he heard it back, and he's like, I liked it, and that's it. He's like, and that became the classic sound. Just trying to keep his job. But yeah, so the Fairchild is one of the most revered compressors of all time. Definitely, probably one of the most expensive, if not the most. And so the 670 was originally meant for a lathe for a mastering, so to cut to vinyl. So there's two modes on it. You have your stereo mode, and then you have your lateral and vertical mode, which is supposed to be the needle on a vinyl cutting lathe.
Oh, wow. That's pretty cool that Jeff came to the studio knowing how big Elliott, a fan of the Beatles, Elliott was.
I think some of the stuff is on YouTube too. Like, I think you can find, like, we did an interview. You can find it on YouTube somewhere.
Oh, awesome! I'll check it out. That's awesome.
And
Yeah.
I played him some Elliott stuff that evening. Played him some stuff. I think I want to say off of Figure 8 probably. So he even called out the one of the Abbey Road pianos.
Awesome. He hadn't heard Elliott's music before. Is that correct?
It was hard to tell. Yeah, it seemed like he maybe knew who he was. He didn't really let on a lot, but he liked it though. He listened intently, and I think right away he got it, and definitely saw the line, between the two, the influence of the Beatles and everything that he did at Abbey Road, innovating recording. So Elliott was
awesome.
definitely a fan of all those old stories and stuff. It seems like one thing too, being just finding gear here in the studio. I think a lot of Elliott's relationships with people like Larry Crane and Rob Schnaff advised him on what great pieces of gear to find. So he had some nice help there in finding cool stuff.
Cool. So what's one of your favorite pieces of equipment that you have in the studio that you enjoy messing with? That's your guitar?
Yeah, this is Epiphone Casino.
Yeah. You played it on Father John Misty tour, right?
I don't think I didn't take this one on tour.
Oh, okay.
But Elliott was a big fan of Gibson 330s, which are the same model as the Epiphone Casino. So I think in a lot of ways, having this guitar here is, it's kind of it was definitely a tip of the hat to Elliott. I had to make sure we had one of these around. We need a good FG 180, actually. Still kind of looking for the right one. But there's a couple microphones and things like that still have Elliott's notes on them or have his name on it. There's a U87 that has his handwritten name on the case, and we were told that was because he would take it on tour with him. And some things like that are special on that front of like just being that they were Elliott's, and that's meaningful unto itself as well. I don't know.
So are the bikes pretty available? For example, I know I'm going to say the name wrong, but the Langevin mic that seems to be another very important piece of not only Elliott's recording, but just as a piece of equipment that's rare. And I think the Beatles used it as well. Is that fairly available just for anybody to use at the studio, just like probably all the instruments in the back?
Yeah, everything's here. It's available for people to use. And I mean, it's kind of become part of the point of having the studio too, is just having lots of tools and toys for people to dig into. Everything from random noisemakers to, there's 2 different pianos here, a bunch of different keyboards. So.
Awesome. How about you, Greg? Is there a favorite toy?
Oh yeah, I have 2 answers for you on this one. So I have my personal favorite, and then I have like my engineer favorite. My personal favorite is the obvious one. I love the A range, because I've worked on all the main consoles, and nothing sounds like the A range, especially when it's in tip top. Like, it's the way I can relate it to. I always relate it back to guitar. The way I can relate it to guitar is like a Neve is like a humbucker, and I think like an SSL might be like a single coil, or no, like an SSL is probably like it's a little thinner. It's like humbucker, but up on the neck position. The A range is like a single coil. Like it just has this bubbly tone. And the other way that I can relate it is it feels like an SSL with a Fairchild after it. Like you can feel. So the reason a Fairchild is a Fairchild is so it's in the harmonics. So an LA2A has one order of harmonics, an LA3 has two orders of harmonics, and then a Fairchild has three orders of harmonics. And so when you put a Fairchild on something, it just makes it like pop right in your face. And that's what I feel like the A range does, is it just brings things way forward. And if you listen to those records, like Off the Walls, classic A range record, Ziggy Stardust, they have a unique tone. Like it's just like boom, right in your face, almost like two in your face, you know. So anyways, that's my personal favorite. But just like an engineering one, my personal favorite, sneaky personal favorite, we have a pre called M1 Hardy, and super unknown. Well, you know, I think a lot of engineers know it, but super, it's not rare, but it's a really clean pre that you can crank it all the way to the max, and there's zero noise floor, so you'll have no buzzes or anything. It's known as a ribbon mic pre, or also as a classical music pre, because you'd have to crank a microphone in a room and not have any noise floor. But yeah, that's, if I'm not using the A range, I'm using that M1 Hardy, and that's my work truck pre. Use it all the time.
Awesome. Yeah, I forgot to ask Joel this too, but what room are you in right now, Greg?
I'm in the owl room. This is our lounge. So let me see. I'm on Zoom on my phone, so I'll give you the little 360 tour. So right here is the wall of Joel's photos that he collects on the road.
Oh, cool.
And we got our 12-string Dan Electro right here. You see that guy? Here's owl number one. And then this is like owl corner. I don't know what exactly to call it. You got the little owl family here. You got Han Solo right there. You got Mexican Han Solo right there. And then we got our little moose head up here. Moose headlight. And then our coat rack and some more owls. And then this is the door that leads into the hallway to the studio.
Cool. Well, just to ask you a really quick question, what's the bathroom like?
Oh, that's the best part. There you go. All right. So we'll start here. Little mirror, more owls. Who's that guy?
Wendy's photo.
Yeah.
Yeah.
One of Wendy's shots of him leaning on the console.
This is Everest tour bus, right? This is your tour bus drawing?
No, that's actually our friend Eberticus's drawing of Neil's tour bus.
I thought that was Everest bus. Yeah, I got some photos. Mexican flag for me. What we got here? We got our gold record in the bathroom.
Yeah, gotta keep
this is Getty with the A range.
Oh,
see that?
Yeah.
Cat. And then this is a sink. And kind of the back of this here. And then
Was
Mr.
that
Fox.
the red balloon? Was that a reference to red balloon right there?
Yes, that is very good. And also
cool.
There's a picture there of Don Antaki, who is the original owner of
right here.
This building. Yeah.
Oh, cool.
Don loved Elliott very much. Seems like they had a very close relationship.
Oh, sweet.
And while I'm here, we got to take you to the golden door.
Oh, yes.
We used to have a matching golden walrus, but that didn't last long. There's a walrus door stopper, and then We painted it gold. It was like a rock color for years, and then we painted it gold, and it was gone in like 2 days.
Cool. Thank you for sharing.
That was
How
awesome.
about you, Joel? Are you in the
Yeah,
like
I'm in the
where
red
everybody
room.
records?
I'm in the red room, which is one of the isolation rooms. Grab this. So this is just, there's kind of guitars lining the walls here. Lots of fun stuff. And more guitars.
Nice.
And
What a
bunch of
dream.
percussion. Danny Whitten. Yeah, this is actually kind of a tiny room, but you can get a whole drum kit in here, and also it isolates through via some glass doors. So I'm taking a walk into the main tracking room now.
Wow.
Piano.
Always love your guys' lighting style too. Of the studio through the pictures and stuff.
It's heavily influenced by my pal Hayden Desser and his studio, Skyscraper
Awesome.
National Park, I think is what his studio is called. But yeah, it's
Is
pretty
it
fun.
so?
There's a lot of vintage, like, I don't know if you can see that.
Oh yeah, cool. As far as I understand, it was a jazz club. Was it a jazz club too at one point?
You know, we've heard that
Is it big?
we've heard that it was a jazz studio in the 80s.
Mhm.
Okay.
So doing some kind of cutting of jazz records there, apparently.
Nice.
So
That's awesome. Thank you guys for walking around and showing everything. It's pretty neat.
yeah, it's dimly lit right now because we've been working on Kelsey's mixes, so it's all vibed out at the moment.
Cool.
The back of the control room features.
Is that who is that on that photo?
Ringo.
Oh,
There's Paul.
cool.
John. And George.
Was there a lot of like images that were
it's-
still in there with that Elliott had left, or?
Not a ton of stuff other than just some of the little notes and things like that.
Yeah.
There was an empty case of the sheath from the Beatles complete recordings.
Yeah. The
so-
book, yes, it's like a white book.
Yeah,
Yeah.
that had been here at some point, it seems.
That's cool. Jeff, do you see any more questions, or you have
I
any
have,
questions yourself?
well, let's see. The questions in the chat, have the owls always been there? Is that a Burrito Brothers reference? I don't know. I mean, I know Flying Burrito Brothers, but I don't know the owl connection.
The owls actually, there is a story to the owls. When we first got this place, when we were recording here, some of the first records, we kept seeing owls in the back alley behind the studio, including one time one landed right next to the front door, on the gate, right next to the door. So we had a bunch of owls around that we were seeing in the neighborhood. So it kind of became a theme. And somebody gave us one, a stuffed animal. I think maybe my friend Rob Douglas gave us an owl that we named Reginald. And Reginald kind of became the mascot of the studio a little bit too. So owls stuck. The rooms have kind of just taken on themes, just more for fun than anything over the years.
I think Reginald's there. He's on top of
Yeah, Reginald's around somewhere.
the
Reginald's
quarter
definitely
machine,
still here
somewhere
in the
around there.
studio somewhere.
Cool.
Someone asked if there's
So-
any big
oh.
star references in the studio.
Good
photos or
question.
anything?
No big star references, but there should always be some big star references.
There you go.
There will be
Totally.
next
In
week. There will
spirit.
be next week.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I have a question. Like, can you describe sort of, we talked a lot about the history, like today, if somebody, hey, I'm calling up New Monkey, or I don't know how they get in contact with you, email you or whatever, but some, band wants to record there. Who's there every day? Who does what? What's the process? How, because, you know, people might be watching this that, hey, I want to record there. Like, kind of what's the day-to-day operations today, I guess, sort of.
Robert, you want to take that?
We are here sort of intermittently, any one of us. Greg is probably here the most often. And we build sort of the personnel around what the session is required. So, usually somebody will reach out to one of us, and we'll get together as a team and figure out, well, what would be the best scenario that's going to serve this particular session. And then we sort of build around it from there. Everything is done sort of a la carte and really specifically minded, depending on the instrumentation, the type of recording that they want to do, whether they have a vision of doing a bunch of overdubbing or they're all going to track live. This will all be sort of dependent factors of how we'll approach that session.
Sounds like a good.
And how available is it now, Robert? With things now changing, I know for a long time, of course, within the year, unfortunately, not too many people have used the studio. But now as things are kind of changing, how do you see operations going at the studio for?
Well, it's been a tough time for everybody. One of the things that had been talked about, we had a client approach us about a month ago, and as the Save Our Stages campaign has been going along for venues and clubs, and some of you might be familiar with that, nobody has really brought up recording studios and how they're going to be helped and sort of saved. And we've watched a lot of people disappear kind of along the way over this last year. We've been able to hold on, and it's now time to kind of step on the gas a little bit. We're being very mindful of the pandemic protocols and the changes that are going on within LA County and so forth. We're very much open for business, but we're approaching this in a very thoughtful way. So, during the pandemic, there were some sessions that would come in here. We'd have situations where people would be recording in the tracking room, and some of the playbacks would be done in there, so that the control room could remain with the personnel that was going to be there, and the band could remain out there. And we were doing some things like that. It's not the most comfortable of situations, but for anyone that wanted or needed to record during that, it was the best thing that we could come up with to keep everybody safe. Now there's a little bit more of play and interflow that's going on. And, as Greg had mentioned earlier, we had a 2-week session that was in here last week. It was the first longer session that we've had in a while. We tend to really like the longer ones. We find that we can really get into the nuances of what people are doing there. So 1 week, 2 week, month long, 2 month long special, sessions. These would be very, very welcome things for us right now. But we've been taking folks that are at where their needs are not so lengthy, and we're happy to accommodate any of those things. And really, we just want to have folks come in that really want to record in this environment. There's tons of studios out there, and people can go. If you're just looking for a room, we may still be the right room for you. But what really excites us is when you're really excited back about being here, regardless of whether there's an Elliott Smith connection or anything like that. We've really endeavored and worked very hard to curate this place so that Elliott's work has been the basis here, but we've wanted to use that as the liftoff point. And after 16 and a half years or so, we're coming into our own as well.
Awesome.
Yeah. One thing I want.
Go ahead, Greg.
Oh, sorry. I'll say one thing that I want to say, and this is New Monkey related, but it's also engineer related, is that even before pandemic, I think studios are, they can be a dying breed. Like, I think it depends on what studio it is, but I think the age of the commercial studio, it's definitely at a point right now. Like, I don't know exactly where it's going to go, but I do know, like, I look at the future, and as far as engineers go, as a path for a job, I look at it and I say, all right, well, I don't know how we're going to train more engineers, because studios are going down, and studios that are popping up, they're not commercial studios. They're like a producer that builds a studio and it's their own studio. There's not a lot of studios like us popping up. And the problem is that in an ever-changing music industry, the studios aren't getting taken care of in the newer ecosystem. Like, the money is technically supposed to trickle down, and it hasn't quite trickled down to studios like us. This is me speaking kind of for all. I think we'll call this like a B room / A room size room. Like, the funds haven't quite trickled down as you would assume they would. And so I think it's good to get the word out to musicians, for them to know that that's what studios are facing right now. Like, I think, for us, like, it's a labor of love, but I also, like I said, I look at it and I'm like, where is the next local band going to record their starting thing? Where engineers going to come in and train, and you as an engineer, you don't just learn it in 6 months. Like, it takes years to become a good engineer, and it takes years to become a good assistant, and it takes years to become a good engineer. And the studio is a dojo for that. So it's just, to me, it's like we looked after the environment. I think as musicians, we need to become a little more conscious of keeping studios alive, because it is part of that ecosystem, at least for bands, for live music.
Do you remember the first thing you got?
Oh,
Sorry about that.
But anyways, yeah, just wanted to throw that in there.
I just want to say, one of the things in my mind in doing this webcast today, and especially at this time, and dealing, like, seeing, and I haven't met Robert personally. I haven't met Greg personally. I was lucky enough to meet Joel a few years ago. But I mean, the way you guys have, like, really approached the early days of New Monkey, and you've kept that constant in not only environment, but attitude and kindness in the way you approach helping bands out and stuff like that. I hope something like what we're doing tonight will, push that, to people who are interested in recording, and seeing that New Monkey is actually a great environment and a positive environment. And, I really hope it helps. So
It's even like, I'm in a band. We've only recorded at home. We have no clue. We're super lo-fi DIY. We like, I've never been in a recording studio in my life. And I feel like, oh, I don't know, I would just be like intimidated. But I mean, the way that Robert explained it, like we cater it toward what you need. And like, cause I would be like, I don't know what I don't know what you do in a studio, but it seems like the personal touch like that is something that maybe is a key to surviving when, you know, Greg's talking about studios struggling and stuff, that if, you know, you have a reputation, like it made me more like, hey, maybe I'm not so intimidated to like go in a recording studio because they're going to like help us based on our situation and our musical needs and our cluelessness about recording and stuff like that. Like it just in that short description you made for me personally, I was like, oh, that sounds pretty cool. Like
Yeah.
they're not just like, here, yeah, we have this room, here's some equipment, play your drums, whatever. It's
No,
like,
no, what?
you know,
Yeah, I can demo how that conversation would go. Imagine you called me, you're like, hey, I want to book New Monkey Studio, right? So we'll do it right now. Go
yeah, I
for
want
it.
to book a New Monkey Studio. I have a
All right,
band.
what's up? Yeah, how many pieces in the band?
We have two people. My friend plays guitar and sings, and I play two drums and a cymbal while I stand up because I don't really know how to play drums.
Amazing. So are you thinking of tracking live, or you want to do overdubs?
Oh, we just always do it live at home. Like I can't, I'm very mediocre as a drummer. And years ago when I would try to like drum, like I can just play together. Like if I have to like play to like a recording of his guitar, like I struggle with that. So
Very cool.
we just like to do it live.
All right. So yeah, we'll have someone in the live room. We'll put someone in the ISO booth. You guys going to be bringing a producer? Do you have an engineer, or would we need to provide one for you?
I think he would have to provide one for us.
Okay, well, we got a whole team. We'll put you in contact with a few people, see who's the best producer for the job, and there you go.
I think we might. It took us 20 years to put out one album, so we've talked about like we need professional help, like to do a second album, so we can do it in like less than 20 years this time. So
Yeah,
you know,
that's a sample combo, but you know you'd be
yeah.
surprised, like that combo has so many variations, you know.
Oh, I'm sure we're super simple. I don't know. We're all like 2-minute songs, hardly any equipment. Like boom, we want to just knock out an album.
Yeah, love it.
Hey, Greg,
Maybe.
That was a beautiful pitch, by the way.
Yeah, I'll talk to him. I'll talk to him once I remember how to play our songs, since we haven't practiced for over a year.
Yeah,
Neat.
Robert and Joel are probably really proud of that.
Really good. Really good.
Well, part of the thing I want to show everybody this. I think you're wearing one, Robert. I'm not 100% sure. I know Greg is.
I am.
Or no,
I am.
you're not, Greg. But a new
Yeah,
monkey hat.
I'm wearing a California hat.
Oh, okay, cool. I wanted to mention this, you know, because you guys, anybody who's listening or watching the webcast later, is that right now you can go to the site and help support the studio and purchase a hat, and of course that the funds from the hat will help support New Monkey. I'm hoping, I don't know if you guys can confirm this yet or not, or if it's gonna happen, that eventually there'll be t-shirts that we will get to enjoy.
Yeah, we're actually
do-
talking about doing a t-shirt next. The hat we did a very limited run of. I think there's only a couple left. But yeah, I think we're gonna do a t-shirt next, and probably do a similar thing where we just do a small run. And yeah, we just want to get them in the hands of people who want to, you know, support us.
Charlie,
Awesome.
maybe you can give us some feedback. We were thinking about going with like collared sleeveless t-shirts. What do you think? Is that a good one? Is that something that would really fly off the shelf?
I don't know. You think this might work?
I mean, they'll fit any size arms because the sleeves won't be there. But I mean,
My gosh.
You got a new job as a fashion consultant.
I might have to wear a jacket on for myself. These arms don't see too much sun.
So
See a few
what
I
is
was
the
gonna say, I
best?
see a few questions in the chat here.
Oh,
Maybe wanted to get to that. Has the door always been gold? Joel, that's you.
No, the door has not always been gold. I painted it gold a few years ago at some point. It just seemed like we needed a gold door for some reason.
And then I have a question
Sorry, what was that?
from RJ Sweet. Are booked out does the studio get? You know, it says this one's from RJ Sweet. Would love to record there after Panama. How far booked out does the studio get? You know that it
Yeah,
depends. It really
RJ, we got to
depends.
have
Like,
you over here.
it's been weird. Like,
Yeah, I think I'm gonna do a
Yeah.
road trip with some buddies. I'm in Oregon, so just kind of hit the
Yeah.
101. You got to do it. I've done it once, so yeah, I would love to. Like, it'd be amazing. I mean, honestly, that's what I'm doing here is just like riding a lot, and then honestly, it would be amazing to be for the first time in a cool space and with some cool people and just try to make something amazing. So
Yeah.
yeah, and it just sounds like you guys are all very passionate about it, which I think makes the music what it is. And yeah, and is it like you guys were saying, like, depending on who's there, like, can we, like, usually Greg's there most of the time is what I'm,
Well,
he's kind of the man behind
Greg is our chief house engineer as well as like sort of head producer, I guess. I don't know, Greg. We're not really a titles kind of place, but because we're so small. But yeah, Greg kind of oversees things on that front, and we have several longtime engineers that have worked here for years.
Perfect. Yeah, I mean,
the
ideally it'd be
talented
August.
Edgar Kamey, I see here.
The
Yeah,
edge.
the
Yeah, the
edge.
Edge.
Love it.
What's up, Edge?
Yeah, as
Crazy.
far as like how much time to book in advance, like just to answer the question for everyone too,
Yeah,
is
I'm just curious.
you know, it all depends on the season. It tends to be that November through, I'd say, March tends to be our busier season. And then summers are traditionally like pretty easy to book. So, but we've also, like, last year, and maybe it was because of COVID, we did have like some individual songwriters that came in by themselves during the summer.
Nice.
But you know, I mean, it's obviously the more advanced the better, but don't be afraid to just reach out and let us know. Like, we're always trying to make whatever we can work.
Amazing. Yeah, I mean, ideally it would be like August. I'm thinking sometime around then.
Oh yeah.
Beautiful.
I mean, I was thinking like recording for a week, like that seems pretty doable. You know, I would assume certain songs take a full day, and I mean, I'm sure Elliott took, you know, it's crazy. Some of his songs, like, I feel like you know, they probably took a long time to write, and some of them probably happened really fast. And like, I don't know, some of his songs, I feel like he wrote way in the past, and then they're like on like later albums too. You know, it's like yeah, I listen to his stuff all the time. I love his stuff. Like, even in like a tropical area, like I'm still listening to it. Like, it doesn't matter where I'm at. And like, it's crazy.
yeah,
Like,
man.
you know, like, it's like, oh, and like, depending on the song, like I go through like loving a song like for like a month at a time. And I'm like, okay, then I'm gonna love this song for a month. And like each song you just keep finding like another just like tidbit of amazingness to it. And it's just like, yeah, that's why I would love to record there. You know, it's like I really feel like I would truly appreciate the essence of it. And yeah.
Heck yeah. One of the two things that I could share, and it's funny, I don't get to like nerd out enough with my
So much
Elliott
nerding.
brethren, is so when I first started here, I assisted with Fritz a couple times just to get like my feet wet here. And I remember some of the cool stories that he told me about Elliott. One of them in particular, he was like, I forgot what I asked him, but he was telling me that he was like, yeah, I remember, you know, I'd be here on a session with Elliott, and he would start the song with like the guitar part that you just wouldn't think. It wasn't the main guitar part. It was like the weird little thing.
Mhm.
And then he would jump steps to this next other thing, and it just, you didn't quite see how it was all coming together. And you're starting to be like, all right, Elliott, like I don't know where we're going here. And then come 2 hours later, it was just this crazy masterpiece. And he's like, that was all in your head, and he put it down like that. So that was one cool story, just to hear about the process. And then the other cool thing that he told me was that Elliott would do a guitar and a vocal live, and then would do the hard double live, like right after.
Yeah,
And that's
he's
just,
more of a live guy.
to me, that's just so wild to think about. Like the talent to do that is ridiculous, especially how hard those parts are. It's so ridiculous.
Insane. Just to nerd out, honestly. Like I've been taking notes too. I'm just like, all right, it's good information.
RJ, just to throw this out at you, like King's Crossing, that song kind of started when he was in high school,
Yeah. Oh.
And then just ended up being on From the Basement on the Hill, and it's just like that's just for him to go through all those years of building that up.
And I feel like a lot of
amazing.
artists are like that, where they've been writing a song for so long of their life that it finally, like when it's for the right album, they put it on the right album or something like that, like it. I'm sure he wrote a lot of stuff like way before it was on, Basement on the Hill. And
Yeah, he revised. It seemed like he revised a lot of lyrics too.
Yeah, you do hear early versions, and but like I don't know if you guys nerd out on like lyrics, but like ones that I've always noticed, he always sings about, like what I've noticed is like thick mud and a choke chain, and I'm always like, that's always an interesting two lyrics to me. He always had like really interesting lyrics, and I'm always like, walking through thick mud, and just like
Probably
it speaks to everyone, man. It's just like such, I don't know. I'm just like, I love that. Love it.
Yeah.
Anyone know? Does anyone have any insight on that? Like, I don't know. Like,
no.
Like choke chain in thick mud. Yeah. It's in like a few songs. It's in multiple songs. It is. It's
I was gonna say, like, I think almost any other artist, I would be like, why is this artist repeating this same phrase in like 4 songs? And it would just come off not good in most cases. But like he had like these running themes or just phrases he liked or something, and it's just not bad and annoying. It's like really good. Like he said that same phrase in another song, but they're just both brilliant songs. And it's weird. Like I wouldn't expect that to be a likable thing, but with his songs, light bulbs breaking or the moon is a light bulb, like I don't know, there's like repeated lyrics quite often.
Yeah, I just didn't know if anyone had like there's any story linked to the studio about that or something like that, or
not on my end. I think you just hit a light bulb. Now I have to go listen back.
If you do, there's a few deep ones. I've done some deep cuts for sure. But hopefully get to see you guys in person, and it's amazing.
Anytime.
All this.
Yeah, man.
Thank you.
Like when I heard, like it was just funny because like Joel and I were talking about like Fugazi and just like all this like just like punk rock, and then it was just like, oh yeah, like I really, I still listen to Elliott Smith like on my Spotify top play, like he's still always up there every year. And so it's just funny to, because I don't know, he's still punk too, like it's like a funny,
How did you first start listening to Elliott, RJ?
I think I was in college actually, and I think it was, I want to say my buddy turned me on to him, and I think I listened, the first song I heard was Satellite, I think, which I still love that song. And yeah, it was, and again, sometimes it does take a minute to like listen to all of this stuff, and then it was definitely during my college days, which is kind of weird to say, but you know, like
That looks like that was
pretty
4 years
young.
ago for you.
Yeah, it's
Yeah,
like
that's
4
what I
years
was gonna
ago.
say. I was
Yeah.
like, but, 2 years ago.
Yeah, it's 2 years ago.
I
but
was finishing college and Roman Candle was coming out.
That's insane. Yeah. And that's the
Dude,
crazy
so-
thing, man. Oh, yeah.
So my big secret, and I said this on the my favorite Elliott Smith song podcast, is that I actually haven't consciously listened to Roman Candle,
Mhm.
only because it's the last part of the discography I haven't heard, and I'm saving it like a good
Nice.
champagne or something.
Oh,
I'm saving it for one life moment to listen to it because it makes me sad that it'll be like the last new stuff I'll ever get to hear.
wow.
So
Well,
There's a lot of
I
that
Jeff
on
may
4
disagree. There's a lot of songs out there, huh?
Yeah,
Oh,
yeah.
there's so many unreleased songs. It's crazy.
You can go forever.
Yeah.
So you probably heard Roman Candle songs just in passing.
yeah, I'm
different
just
ways.
like la la la. Yeah.
Yeah.
If you saw Goodwill Hunting, I think there's a few on there. Maybe.
Yeah, at
maybe
least
not.
one.
Yeah, definitely.
Yeah.
I actually
Yeah.
saved Either Or to the end because there was a good number of Either Or songs on Goodwill Hunting, and at the time, to me, that ended up becoming my favorite album. And until From the Basement on the Hill came out, and now that's my favorite album.
I bought Roman Candle. I gotta say that was the only album there was at the time. So I bought it before the self-titled album. There was He Miser, which I hadn't listened to at that time, but yeah, I saw Elliott. I saw Elliott with Mary Lou Lord in March of '95. I'm sure I bought Roman Candle right after that. So then the self-titled came out shortly after that. So Roman Candle was my first exposure to Elliott, pretty
Oh.
much.
Awesome.
So cool. Well, one thing also I think it'd be cool to share with y'all, because I think you'll appreciate it, is some of the reaction that we get when clients come into the studio, like friends come in. Like I remember when Phoebe Bridgers came in, she huge Elliott fan, and went into the red room and told her that Elliott would sleep here and this is where he would sleep, and just had a moment. And it's for me, I get to be here pretty often, and just human nature, you'll like lose sight that all right, it's a privilege to be here, and just to see that, or see when a band comes in. And I mean, this happens so many times where a band will record and then they'll tell me on the last day, they'll be like, I didn't want to tell you this, but I'm a massive Elliott fan and it freaks me out that I'm here.
Mhm.
And thank you. And just to see that, it's such a cool reminder and such a cool feeling to just be all right, this is cool. This is tight,
Okay, ask you, go ahead, Charlie.
Go ahead, Jeff.
I'm going off on a personal tangent with Greg. I think a lot of the people that I know that recorded there knew you. One of them I know has played. Well, I occasionally do Elliott Smith. People join my Instagram feed and play covers and stuff. And Greg from Cheek Face, you recorded with Cheek Face, didn't you?
Yeah, I produced both of the records.
Yeah, I've known Greg for quite a long time. He played Ballad of Big Nothing on my Instagram thing. And then I know that Timmy Milner, Timmy.
Oh yeah.
Yeah, I know he really, when I first met him, he's like, I recorded this at New Monkey, because he was supposed to play in person at a couple Elliott Smith tribute things. I did in-person ones in Orange County in 2018, 19, and 20, and he just last minute couldn't make it or something. But yeah, I know that was a big thrill for him. And then I think Rosie Tucker recorded with you too, didn't they?
Oh yeah. So yeah, Greg's been a huge champion for the studio. If Greg sees this, thank you so much. Yeah, I mean, he's been really great. Also, another huge Elliott fan, and has been definitely a catalyst in the past 5 years of getting projects through that, helped us keep open, and also help the artists that also that wanted to work here. Rosie is a huge Elliott fan.
Yeah.
And Timmy did a bunch of weeks a couple years ago. with his partner. I'm forgetting his last name, but Sam.
Sam Windsor.
Yeah. Yeah, they, great sessions, and Timmy was so cool. It's funny, he ended up hitting me up later on for advice, like on how to get his stuff placed, and like 2 months later he was like, I took your advice and now I got my stuff placed. I was like, wow, that's crazy. That takes people a long time to do that.
Cool. Yeah, I played, booked him at shows here in Orange County. I think he lives in LA now, but like I book shows sometimes at like this little place in Orange County. He's played my shows and stuff like that. So is
Awesome.
Rosie. So is Rosie too once. So
yeah.
Anyways, I wanted to throw those names out there to you.
Just to jump into about the discussion about people visiting New Monkey, like BB Burgers and stuff. I was wondering, has Elliott's family visited the studio since maybe more recently than at the beginning, just to see how it's come along since you guys have done so much work to it.
No visit. I think Ashley has mentioned wanting to try to come by next time she's around. I think also there's an element of his family kind of maybe not wanting to be super attached to some of the material things of the past. So they haven't shown a ton of interest. Yeah, I mean, Ashley's a friend, so we stay in touch, and I know she's rooting for us. And yeah, hopefully, I think she came by last. I think maybe I was.
Yeah, she came by. I met with her.
She came by. Yeah.
Yeah.
Cool.
We had a nice conversation.
Yeah,
that's awesome.
She's great and knows more about Elliott's music than most people. She played me some stuff that I've never heard before, which is always incredible. There's so much.
That's awesome. Well, I don't know if Jeff has any more questions, but maybe before wrapping up, I was wondering if we can maybe go ask you guys if you have anything to add, or if you want to talk more about the studio or anything like that to maybe wrap it up. Unless, do you have any more questions, Jeff?
No, I think it's a good time to get their final thoughts, whatever they want to say.
Yeah. You want to go first, Robert?
Sure. I want to reiterate that we don't get a chance to just sort of do the fireside chats like this very often. So it was a real pleasure. Jeff and Charlie, thank you for putting it together, and thank all of you for coming on and asking us such good questions. You know, we're very much in survival mode, and we're working really hard to kind of come out of the pandemic in a very strong fashion. And I have every bit of belief that we're going to be in good shape. And I think that as things are opening up around the country, around the world, people are really starving for arts, and they're starving for the things that they were creating in their own homes. I think that if there's ever going to be a time to have a resurgence of studios, it's going to be now, but kind of like post-pandemic, because people want to have that experience. Jeff, you're already talking about doing something you've never done before. RJ, you're talking about wanting to come in. You know, this is just a little microcosm of it, but I really feel like people are wanting to have a different experience, and we have been very, very lucky to be the stewards of this place, this very magical place, and we hold that in very high esteem, and we really value and appreciate everybody that's come in here through the 16 plus years, and we're looking forward to the next round of folks that are going to be coming, and we're really looking forward to the changes. So thank you.
Thank you. Do you want to go next, Greg? Maybe?
Sure. Yeah, first of all, I just want to thank both of you for having us on. I mean, this has been so fun, and it's weird that like I'm on my phone and I feel like I lost myself just chilling with you guys, which is really cool. But yeah, I mean, to Robert's point, I mean, I think one thing that me personally I've been trying to focus on for the studio is trying to create more community, because I think at the end of the day we are here for the music community, and I think building those bridges, whether it's to what is the music industry or to what is local artists and all that. I mean, I think if anybody here, if you have ideas and you have things that you feel, say, just shoot us a message and say, hey, I'm reaching out, I think I can XYZ, whatever. I mean, whatever we can do to help you and vice versa it's awesome, because we want to stay here doing our thing and keep helping and keep the legacy here.
Awesome, thank you.
Roll.
Yeah.
How about you, Joel?
Gosh. I mean, this is one subject I could have talked for 2 hours by myself,
I
easily.
feel the same. I feel the same.
Charlie, I've known you for quite a long time now. Thank you for all that you've done to protect Elliott's legacy, and from being a fan of the initial like Sweet Adeline page back in the day. I've known who you are for a long, long time. So I appreciate you taking the time to set this up. And Jeff, it sounds like we probably should have known each other.
Yeah, we went to the same high school. I spared Joel. Yeah, I didn't bring up his freshman high school picture on the computer here, but I found it in my yearbook here at home.
Yeah,
Show it.
Yeah, do it.
Nah, I didn't upload it to the computer, so it won't come out good.
I'm really excited to be working with Kelsey Oria, who's been on this call here a little bit. Really excited to introduce you guys to her and her music. I met her through Elliott, thankfully. Hey, Kelsey. I met Kelsey through Elliott, thankfully, because I had gone onto YouTube to try to figure out. I wanted to watch some clips of Elliott playing the song Happiness so I could figure out the correct chord voicings. And I came across several cover versions that Kelsey had done and was just completely blown away. So we've had a lot of fun creating some new versions of some of Elliott's writing here at the studio. And we're getting close. We're kind of into the mixing stage now, so pretty soon we're going to share a really I think charming and beautiful and unique take on Elliott's music. So yeah, Kelsey. Yeah, that's one thing that I've been working on. I'm really excited about, and it is something also that I think all of you could possibly enjoy a lot, and draws a thread to Elliott's legacy directly. So it's been a cool project for us to kind of reimagine some of his things in a really respectful way, without doing carbon copies. So I'm excited to share that stuff with you guys sometime soon.
We're looking forward to it.
Watch out, everybody, to be following New Monkey on all social media. I just checked. I'm already following Kelsey, so follow her. I was like, I better follow. Oh, I already am. So
newmonkeystudio.com is the website too.
Yep, studio singular. Yep.
Oh yeah. Sorry.
Thank you guys so much for having us, and for everybody tuning in. RJ, it's good to see you all the way in Panama.
Thanks to everybody watching, and
thank you. And thank you again, like from the bottom of my heart. I could never express how I mean, I kind of told this to Joel through Instagram, but you guys are keeping it basically a living part of Elliott alive, and we're so thankful for it. And as fans, and continued success, and we are here to support you guys. Let us know if we can in any way. And again, we're thankful for your approach and for everything you guys are doing in music and honoring Elliott's legacy. So thank you so much.
Yeah.
And thank you for joining us.
Yeah. Thank
Thanks
you
all.
guys.
Let's get some more good new music out there.
For
Yeah,
sure.
dog.
totally.
All right.
Yeah.
Guess
Rock and roll.
that's
It's 1 o'clock where I'm at, so I'm gonna
it.
go.
Come on, it's only 12:40, man.
Or 12:40. Yeah. One of those. All right.
Oh, and
Rock and
All right.
yeah,
roll.
thank
All right, good night, everybody. Thank you.
We'll let everybody get
Good
some
night.
sleep.
Thank
Thanks,
you.
everybody.
Thank
I'll
you.
try to get this
Bye-bye.
up on YouTube. Thanks. Bye, everybody.
Sounds good.
Have
Bye.
a good night.
Bye, Greg.
Bye.